Hello, everyone. The other day I was asked what the definition of needy was. And I thought to myself, there's probably a lot of other people out in the world that really don't understand the true definition of needy. Now, as much as I don't like us to label ourselves as such a thing, neediness or anything else, because then that means that we will identify with that and then we think that's who we are forevermore. I do feel like definitions are very serving to help us identify certain behavioral patterns. But the key here is to understand that even if you identify as a certain label out in the world, anxious, avoidant, codependent, needy, narcissist, whatever it might be, doesn't mean that you have to stay that way. So I looked up the definition of neediness first so I could bring that to you. And as I was reading it, I was thinking to myself, this is just not enough. This is not enough for people to really get to understand the full gist of it, because neediness is wrapped up in a lot of things and it's come into place for a particular reason. But once again, it doesn't have to stay that way. So first, I want to read to you all what the definition of neediness is that I've discovered. It's an excessive need for acceptance or affection that results in that the person repeatedly becoming overly attached to people, depending on them too much. So the way I explain this is that there's a portion inside of you that has a void. It's a piece of you that doesn't love, approve of, or accept yourself. So therefore, somewhere along the way, when you started to feel those feelings earlier in your life, something came into your life, i.e., a person of some type, and they gave you some type of love or acceptance. And then you started to look at them as your source, and you started to believe that the outside world was your source for love, approval, and acceptance. The problem with this is that short-term wise, that's okay because it might be able to help get us back on track. But when we start to rely on that long term, then we are putting all of our energy and efforts and power into the hands of other people. And that is not true empowerment and is not true self-worth. It's a false self-worth that is always going to be reliant on the people around us to make us feel a certain way. And that's where people pleasing come from. That's where codependency comes from. That's where we quite literally give up our personal power to make sure that we meet the needs of these people around us so that we can feel whole and complete. The problem is that neediness over a long-term period of time can be very off-putting to people. It can feel very smothering. And you might have heard people say to you in the past, or maybe they haven't, they just did it, but they may have said to you, I need some space. And when people are saying that to us, that's a huge indicator that we might be pushing too much energy towards them, and they can feel this. And even if you are a needy person, and you are completely nice and kind and you're never mean or rude or abrupt, you might be thinking you're not doing anything wrong because you're just reaching out or making the plans or texting all the time or whatever it might be. But that person, because we are energetic beings, that person can feel that energy coming at them. And it's very repelling energy because it's pushing into a person's personal freedom, their personal space. So it doesn't necessarily mean that someone has to be in your presence all the time. It can just be that they're coming at you all the time. And many times people who are dealing with needy type individuals will begin to lose themselves over time because perhaps they don't yet have a firm grasp and understanding of who they are, or they're suffering from people pleasing as well. So they'll say yes to you when they really don't feel like saying yes, but over time they're going to feel like they have lost themselves completely and they have no grasp of who they are. And then the relationship can become enmeshed, which is a very uncomfortable place to be. And for people who may be already established people pleasers or trying to work through that, when they are around a needy type individual, they may not have the strength yet or the personal empowerment yet to really set and maintain firm boundaries with you, likely because they don't want to hurt your feelings. And this doesn't even mean that they don't like you or they don't enjoy spending time with you. It just means they need their alone time too. But they're afraid of saying no to you because of what might come. Either they might get some backlash from you, maybe you'll fight, or maybe you'll start to think that they don't like you, and then you'll up your neediness game and saying, oh, I'm sorry. Am I too much? Am I pushing in, or this and that? And then they might be like, no, it's okay. It's okay. When really it's not okay, because sometimes people are not honest in relationships because they're afraid of hurting yours, mine, anybody's feelings. So they don't tell you what's really going on because they don't want to deal with the backlash that's going to come from that. So I want to give you 3 ways, 3 tips to start working on your neediness behavior. Tip number one is to get really comfortable being alone. Some people might say, well, I already spend a lot of time alone. Well, you might be alone because you've had this needy energy that is going out to people and they feel it. So they're backing away from you. So you're forced to be alone. But I want to say this, choose to be alone. Set some time aside every single day where you're like, I'm not going to reach out to other people. I'm not going to try to fill this void because it's going to feel like sort of an addiction. Like you just are going to feel yourself picking up the phone and wanting to reach out to somebody or wanting to message somebody, or you're all over social media. You're going to feel this pull towards this only because that is familiar in your brain. That is the neural pathway that has been formed. That is your programming, that the minute you feel alone, you start to reach out. It's like boom, 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 boom. It's what you do naturally. So I invite you to take some time to really intentionally spend some alone time with self. And you can start small. You can say, I'm going to give myself an hour. I'm not going to think about anybody. I'm not going to reach out to anybody. I'm not going to be on social media. I'm not going to request plans with anybody. And go get yourself immersed in something that you like to do. Take care of yourself, really honor your needs and what it is that you want to do, and get yourself excited about something else rather than going down the same old neuro pathway of reaching out to people to try to fill that void within. And the second thing is to give yourself the love, acceptance, approval, validation, attention, all of those things that you are seeking in the outside world. This sounds like such a simple thing, but let me tell you something. It has the propensity, the power to heal that void within. In fact, I talk about it at length in my book, The Recovering People Pleaser, a spiritual guide to reclaim your true worth and attract the love you deserve. Because many times needy type individuals will get into relationships with people and they'll stay in those relationships, even if those relationships are not good for them, because of this unconscious void that they have within. They'd rather settle for somebody who is not good for them rather than to be alone. So tip number one, taking some time to be alone. Tip number two is to really start to give yourself the love, approval, acceptance, and validation that you are seeking from other people. Here's the deal. When we seek that from other people, that void inside of our worthiness cup, when we get it from them, it'll go in the top and right out the bottom of the worthiness cup because it's not the cure, which will keep us on this same pattern repeatedly. But when you start giving it to yourself, the bottom goes on the worthiness cup, and then that starts to stick. And as that starts to feel, that is your self-worth. And your self-worth will naturally and organically guide you to making more healthy decisions in your relationships. And the third tip is to start calming your nervous system. All healing work begins with calming our nervous system. Right now, many people's nervous system is on this state of wah, and it may not even feel that way. It could be like this outward anxiety, but it could be just like this energy that is driving you towards certain behaviors. Somehow, some way, your body feels unsafe and it feels like it has to go out into the world and grab what it needs to survive. And this may have happened based on something that happened in your childhood, and it has taken root inside of your psyche, and it has continued through all of these decades. But right now, you are a grown adult and you have the capacity to give yourself everything that you need. And unbeknownst to many people, everything that we need resides within self. So when we start to give that to ourselves, and at the same time, we are calming our nervous system, we are actually reforming new neural pathways that are of empowerment, they're of confidence, they're of stability. It's a completely different energy than that of neediness. If you have discovered that you are needy, I want you to look at just like that. It's just a term that is labeling a set of behaviors that you are in right now. This doesn't mean there's something chronically wrong with you. This doesn't mean that you can't change. This doesn't mean that you can't heal, nor is it the time to shame yourself for being needy in your past. Because I will tell you, the world is full of needy individuals. This is part of the human experience. We come here, we know who we are, but through life, we start to disconnect and fracture away from that self, and then we look into the world to fill that void. So you might just be a little bit needy, or you could be a lot of bit needy, but it doesn't really matter either way. The cure is always the same. Do not shame yourself for having a human experience. The best thing we can do, y'all, is to just take note of our behaviors, have some awesome awareness around it. So it's not coming from the unconscious part of our brain anymore. When we bring it forefront, we can start to deal with it because we know exactly what it is that we are trying to heal. If you haven't yet, I highly recommend you jump over to Amazon and buy my book, The Recovering People Pleaser. I will put the link up here for you, and I will also put it in the description below. Also, if you're someone who is looking for some additional help in this area, this was me. I was the needy girl, and I have healed that for good within myself, and life is so much more peaceful. And not only that, I have now called people into my life that vie for my time and attention. No more am I vying for their time and attention. I've completely flipped that script because I learned how to love, accept, approve of, and give to myself that very thing that I thought I had to get from the outside world. I will also put the link here if you are interested in working with me. If you're new here, then I super hope that you hit the subscribe button, turn on your bell notifications, leave me a comment, and give me a really big, tasty thumbs up, because that really helps the algorithms and helps me to grow my channel. So until next time, everybody, remember, you matter. Now go love yourself.